I'm Pastor Steve Talmage at Love of Christ Lutheran Church in Mesa, Arizona. Each week, Pastor Nanette Christopherson or I try to provide a brief introduction to two of the assigned Bible readings for the upcoming Sunday. We're going to look at the Gospel for Sunday, August 9th, 2026. It's from Matthew 14:22 to 33. And let's get some background on this, as Matthew is the designated Gospel for this lectionary year that we're in. The Sea of Galilee sits about 700 feet below sea level. It's ringed by hills. Cool air rushing down through the ravines can whip up sudden violent squalls. So it's a lake known for sudden storms because of its geography or its location. This scene follows immediately after Jesus feeds the 5,000, a story about God's abundant provision now paired with one about God's presence and danger. The fourth watch, mentioned in verse 25, is roughly 3 to 6 a.m. The disciples have been straining at the oars for the better part of the night. It was normal for these ships to go at night because they would use the stars for navigation, the moon for navigation, rather than during the day. They would often go out fishing at night just to capture the fish as well. So this isn't unusual that they're out on a boat in the middle of the night. We have "It is I." This is a deliberate echo of the Jewish scriptures. Jesus is identifying with Yahweh, God. So in the Old Testament, mastery over the raging sea belongs to God alone. We see this in Job and in the Psalms. Walking on water is not a party trick. It is a theophany. So our Old Testament first lesson as a theophany, God appearing to Elijah, and here now God in Jesus is going to appear to the disciples in the boat. The Greek behind it is I, is ego eimi, the same phrase used in the Greek Old Testament for God's self-revelation. Matthew, writing to a Jewish Christian audience, wants readers to hear this story as a revelation of who Jesus is, not merely what Jesus can do. So, we get into our lesson. Sent ahead alone with the Father. Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. Jesus sends the disciples into the very storm he foresees. He does not shield them from difficulty. He sends them ahead, trusting them to the same care that will meet them on the water. This is, a living example of how we live our life of faith. Life is messy, it's stormy, it's unpredictable. But Jesus continues to send us out with the good news of God's presence and love in and revealed through Jesus. Prayer precedes the miracle. Jesus' solitary prayer on the mountain mirrors Moses at Sinai, anticipates Gethsemane, a pattern of drawing near to God before facing what is hard. And this is an example for us. Are we praying more the harder life gets? Or are we just simply waiting for God to do something? Jesus himself goes into prayer before confronting the elements of his day. But by this time, the boat, battered by waves, was far from land, for the wind was against them. Obedience does not exempt the disciples from danger. They're doing exactly what Jesus told them to do, and still the wind turns against them. Faithfulness and hardship are not opposites in Scripture. Far from the land names a real and common experience. Congregations know this feeling. Sometimes congregations feel adrift, they're exhausted. They seem to be far from any shore of certainty of what's next, how we're going to make it into the future. And it may be rooted in grief or illness or institutional change. But this feeling of far from the land speaks to a sense that all of us feel at some point in our life individually and more than likely together. 25 to 27, take heart, do not be afraid. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea, but when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. But immediately Jesus spoke to them. Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. Walking on the sea is an act reserved for God alone in Israel's imagination, a direct claim about Jesus' identity. A ghost. Terror is the disciples' first understandable reaction. The miracle itself does not immediately bring comfort. Take heart. Jesus speaks before they ask. Grace and reassurance come first, unearned and unrequested. It is I, the divine self-identification echoing God's name to Moses. This is who is present with them in the storm. This is what Matthew wants to communicate to his congregation, to us, the readers of this gospel. Jesus is God in the flesh dwelling among us. It is I, and we don't have to be afraid. Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. Only Matthew includes this episode. It fits Matthew's interest in discipleship, what it looks like in practice to follow Jesus' word, even when it defies natural expectation. Peter's request is itself an act of trust. If it's you, I'll get out of the boat. He does not presume to walk on water on his own authority. He asks for a command and steps out only in response to Jesus' word, come. Faith here is obedient response, not self-generated confidence. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Peter looks at the wind, not at Jesus. The moment his attention shifts from the one who called him to the danger around him, fear returns and he begins to sink. This is a familiar spiritual rhythm. It's not a rare failure. Lord, save me is itself a psalm of lament in miniature. Again, connecting to our Elijah text. Peter's cry is short, it's honest, and it's directed at the right person. It is a model of prayer for anyone who feels himself going under. No eloquence required, only the address, Lord, save me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand, caught him, saying to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? The rescue comes first. Jesus catches Peter before he says a word of correction. Gospel, the saving hand. Precedes law, the searching question. The order matters. Peter is not made to earn rescue by first getting his theology straight. Little faith, not no faith. The Greek, oligopistos, is a word Matthew uses elsewhere for the disciples' anxious but real faith. Jesus' question is diagnostic and gentle, not a verdict of condemnation. So the heart of the text, we have simul justus et peccator on the water. Luther described the Christian as simul justus et peccator, at the same time righteous and sinner. Peter embodies this in a single motion. He is generally walking by faith and generally sinking in doubt at once, not two separate stages. For a congregation like ours, this is pastorally freeing. Faith is not a possession we either have or lack, proven by the absence of fear. Faith is trust directed toward Christ, even while the wind still howls and the doubt is still real. Peter's sinking does not unbaptize him or revoke his call among the 12. Jesus' grip does not wait for Peter's fear to fully subside. Salvation is by grace, received through faith, even faith that is small, wavering, and mixed with doubt. When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. The storm ends only once Jesus is in the boat. The calm follows his present, not merely Peter's rescue. A reminder that the church's peace rests on Christ among us, not on any single person's strength or recovery. Truly you are the Son of God is Matthew's climatic confession, before Peter's confession later on in Matthew 16. It is the whole boatload, not Peter alone, who worships Jesus. The community's confession, forged through a shared ordeal, is the fitting response to grace. So reading the whole text, we see ELCA Lutheran themes at a glance. Grace comes before correction. Peter is simul justus epicator. He's walking by faith and sinking in doubt at the same moment. Faith is trust, not the absence of fear. Christ is present in the storm. God's presence doesn't remove the wind and waves. It meets the disciples in the middle of them. Vocation amid hardship. Obeying Jesus' words, getting in the boat, does not exempt the disciples from difficulty. Baptismal imagery. Water as danger and as the place of rescue evokes the church's own theology of baptism, dying and being raised. Communal confession. The whole boat worships together. Faith is sustained in community, not only in solitary heroics. So your takeaway. For a congregation navigating its own storms, grief, uncertainty, institutional change, or private fear, this text offers not a formula for calm water, but a promise. Christ comes toward us in the storm, speaks before we ask, and catches us before we are corrected. Little faith, cried out honestly toward Christ, is still faith. Thanks for watching this video. God bless you as you get in the boat, travel into the storm, and trust that Jesus is coming toward us, is with us, and will always extend a saving hand.